Hi to all, всем привет. So this video is another video in the series of episodes talks about philosophers, which means we're gonna overview philosophy or the view of the philosophy of a philosopher. This time it's gonna be Aquinas. I'm not following some kind of or any kind of chronological order or how they appeared in their lives or in this life, which means that the previous ones could be from 19th century, and this one is before Christ, like 5th century before Christ. I'm not sure when he lived, but I'm gonna have a look at that in a couple of seconds. So today the video is about Aquinas. Aquinas, so this is his appearance, how he looked. So basically I keep using what I use, two dictionaries for Russian and English interpretation, Thesaurus and dictionary. So this is how he looks, and I'm gonna try to make this video a bit shorter. Hopefully it says something about his biography. Maybe it doesn't, but if you are interested, you can have a look about his biography online in Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is kind of really good. However, it doesn't have a lot. It doesn't have some of the philosophers I tried to search it. So basically you may face the same thing, like finding not everyone who you want, but let's start. I hope this video will last about maybe an hour. I will try to do so at least. So vocabulary for this video is eternal, divine, inclinations, what you are inclined to do, procreation, conduct, personal behavior or way of acting, precepts, a commandment or direction given as a rule of action or conduct, a maxim, an expression of a general truth or principle. Promulgated, it's an interesting word, to make known, to proclaim, promulgate. Legitimate authority, a legal authority that has the right to be a sovereign. A legal authority that has the right to be a sovereign. Okay. Second. Okay, legal authority that has the right to be a sovereign. Proportional, in proportion, doctrine, a particular principle, it can be something that is taught. Okay, so we're done with that. Nothing too serious, nothing too difficult. This overview of this philosopher Aquinas, as far as I remember, is quite interesting, and it has only 4 pages. This makes me very interested about it, so quite good about that. Aquinas on natural and positive law. The Greek thinkers we have been examining, Socrates, Plato, I haven't done Plato yet, Aristotle and Epicurus, all started thinking about ethics by examining human happiness. So all started thinking about ethics by examining human happiness. What it may lead to is that human happiness is not always to do with ethics. Some people cannot behave themselves properly when they are actually happy, and they cannot kind of control themselves. I'm not gonna say something about every sentence, but this is something that I thought about. Ethics, they thought, is the business of working out how best to achieve a fitting and proper happiness. Ethics, they thought, is the business of working out how best to achieve a fitting and proper happiness. Ethics, okay. But this is only one way to think of ethics. In today's lecture, sorry, okay. In today's lecture we are going to look at a very different approach. We are going to examine the ethics of the greatest and most influential philosophers of the medieval period. Yeah, Saint Thomas Aquinas. So he lived in 13th century. So this is pretty much nearly 2000 years after Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. Medieval period, the 1300 years that separates Lucretius, the Roman expositor of Epicurean philosophy, from Aquinas. That separates Lucretius, the Roman expositor of Epicurean philosophy, Lucretius, from Aquinas, had seen the rise of Christianity. So by that time, Christianity has risen quite a lot. This makes a profound difference in the field of ethics. So Christianity helped to develop a field of ethics, to get it more known. Aquinas was greatly influenced by Aristotle. And not at all influenced by Epicurus. Okay, Aquinas was greatly influenced, but probably not greater than those who lived with Aristotle, because Aristotle lived like 3rd century before Christ, or 4th, or maybe 2nd, maybe 5th. So it was before, I think. I'm pretty sure it was before. How could he be that much influenced by Aristotle? Very interesting. Maybe he was influenced by his works and the books and readings and teachings and all of those things that he done, and not at all influenced by Epicurus. So he wasn't influenced by Epicurus. However, his ethics differ crucially from Aristotle's. Yeah. So maybe what that means is that I heard in some movie a word that this world is going to hell, including ethics as well. So maybe the ethics is something that shows us that it actually really happens. However, his ethics differ crucially from Aristotle's. Aquinas thinks of ethics not only in terms of a god, life, and the virtues needed to secure it, but also in terms of law. Some things he calls natural law, and this is where it becomes very interesting. What is natural law? Since Aquinas is a Christian, he holds that God is the benevolent creator of the world. I'll have a look at this word, benevolent. Sorry about that. Okay. Intending or showing kindness, showing a motivator of sympathy, understanding, and generosity, generous in providing aid to others. Okay. So benevolent creator of the world, he thinks God is. God rules the world and does so according to principles. God has a rational plan for the world, and this plan Aquinas calls eternal law. So the plan of the God for this world, or what happens in the world, is called an eternal law. calls eternal law. Non-rational creatures, animals, plants, inanimate objects, obey the eternal law blindly. Okay, so non-rational creatures like animals, plants, inanimate objects obey the eternal law blindly. So they just obeyed. So they keep doing it, keep following this law blindly without even understanding that they do it. So they do good and they don't even know they do good. Okay. They are determined by it. If a stone thrown in the air describes a parabola and falls to earth, it does so because of God's design of the world. God's design of the world. That is, it does so because of the eternal law of God. So it's eternal law of God includes physics, how we say it these days. It doesn't obey these laws, strictly speaking, but its path through space is determined by them. It doesn't obey these laws because it's an inanimate object. It cannot obey something. It just. But actually, in another place or in another time I spoke or maybe heard or read from somewhere that in the next life we can be even a stone. So maybe he obeys it. Strictly speaking, but its path through space is determined by them. So path through space of this thrown stone is determined by the laws, eternal laws and design that God created. That's what Aquinas thinks. We are rational creatures. We are rational creatures, which means, according to Aquinas, that we have free will and can make up our own minds about how we will act. And that, I think, makes a problem. So how do we experience God's eternal law? Because we have free will, our behavior is not determined by God's eternal law. So how do we experience God's eternal law? Because we have free will, our behavior is not determined by God's eternal law. Okay, so free will doesn't let God's eternal law makes us do what we should do to keep everything all right, in the way that a stone's path through space is. Instead, we experience God's eternal law as normative. Нормативный. We experience God's eternal law as normative, as a demand telling us how we ought to behave, not how we inevitably will behave. And here comes excuse. So pretty much, if you have to do something and you do not do so because of your will, you will probably say, oh, there's some kind of excuse. It's not because I didn't want to do something, it's because I couldn't do so because there is this and there is that, and this made me do the other way. So basically, because we have free will, God's eternal law becomes a demand, or is overviewed by us as normative, as a demand telling us how we ought to behave, not how we inevitably will behave. Normative laws are laws that set out how people ought to behave. Descriptive laws are laws describing how things do in fact behave. Aquinas' key philosophical claim is that God's eternal law is both descriptive for non-rational nature, and normative for rational nature, us and any other rational creatures, in example, angels. So it's normative for us, people, animals, and insects, and all of those other things. And it's descriptive for non-rational nature. And descriptive means how things do in fact behave. Descriptive law. When he speaks of this law in its normative aspect, Aquinas refers to natural law. Natural law, therefore, consists in principles that we should respect because they are natural. They are part of God's providential organization of the world. Providential, wait a sec. Предопределенный, окей. Natural law, therefore, consists in principles that we should respect because they are natural. They are part of God's providential organization of the world. Okay, but it's something new. Let's have a look what it says next further. But how can we figure out the content of natural law? God made us with basic inclinations, which are reliable indications of the content of natural law. With basic inclinations, which are reliable indicators of the content of natural law. The basic principle is seek God and avoid evil. The complete obviousness and blandness of this principle supports Aquinas' claim that it is fundamental. Claim that it is fundamental. What we need to do next is work out what is evil and what is God. Then we need to work out how we should. Okay, so what is evil and what is God? So basically, if the eternal law kind of suggests the way of everything, or the way of how everything should obey it, and also there is free will that makes everything not work out as how it should be, then probably good is doing something according to or obeying it, and evil is not obeying it. Then we need to work out how we should seek good and how we should avoid evil. This is where Aquinas' natural law theory gets a little complicated. First, let us turn our attention to the good things we are supposed to seek. Aquinas gives this list: life, procreation, knowledge, society, and reasonable conduct. Aquinas gives this list. Aquinas gives this list: life, procreation, knowledge, society, and reasonable conduct. He thinks that we know immediately by inclination that these count as good and are things to be sought out. Yeah, but people may be fucked up in their minds and brain, and they may think that life the way they lead it is alright, but it's fucked up completely. Or they may think that they procreate good stuff, but they actually procreate evil. Knowledge is, yeah. People may think that they know a lot, but they don't know much at all. society and reasonable conduct. Yeah. He thinks that we know immediately by inclination that these count as good and are things to be sought out. So far, so good. But in what ways are we supposed to pursue these goods? Should we do just anything to stay alive? Should we just do just anything to stay alive, or save the life of another, to obtain knowledge, to procreate, or to become friends with another? Obviously not. By examining our actions, their goals, and their circumstances, we can distinguish between proper and improper. Okay, by examining our actions, their goals, and their circumstances, we can distinguish between proper and improper. Okay, so that's what I said before, that they may think that they do good, but they are doing bad. So basically, here he says that there is a distinguishment between good and bad, or proper and proper, improper and proper, between proper and improper, or defective ways of trying to obtain goods. He thinks that he procreates, but he actually goes to the market and steals something. So for someone it's procreation. It's because he has now he has something new that belongs to him, as he thinks, but it doesn't actually belong, and it's a bad fact that you steal something and all of those things. For example, to seek friendship with someone because they are rich and influential is to fail to show proper regard for the good of friendship. So friendship is not such a behavior of a person, which means that he probably is looking after obtaining something good out of this friendship. Friendship is just because two people are in good terms, and they are kind of, maybe they are making each other better or something, but the thing is that people without bad inclination may still get this or possess this. It is to treat friendship, for example, to seek friendship with someone because they are rich and influential is to fail to show proper regard for the good of friendship. It is to treat friendship as a tool, something useful for your other purposes. Again, consider the possibility of saving a life by killing another person, an innocent bystander. Again, consider the possibility of saving a life by killing another person, an innocent bystander, saving your life. But here, where it becomes a bit ridiculous and tricky, that you cannot even protect your life by the price of taking away another person's life. If it's your destiny to die, you should die. Don't fucking try to save your ass. That's interesting. Again, consider, this fails to show proper regard for the good of life. You intend to kill, so your action is directed against the value of life. This is a defective way of responding to the fundamental value of life. This reminds me of one of the philosophers who is an advocate, or who is or Juris Doctor or someone, I'm not sure, but he is a lot into legal aspects and law, and so he is also, on top of that, is a philosopher. So he is overviewing philosophy from the angle, from the point of law. And I'm not talking about this one, I'm talking about the other one. So he goes into special criminal cases and overviews them. Yeah, maybe I have it in my videos. I don't remember who that is. But basically, what goes further is Aquinas doesn't give us a neat theory about all the conditions under which we act wrongly. He doesn't give us all the theory about all the conditions under which we act wrongly. We can't set out a list of all the rules or specify the natural law in complete detail. Nonetheless, we can observe many clear general cases of the natural law and its demand upon us. It is always wrong to kill the innocent, to lie, to commit adultery. No, come on. It's too much, because it may lead to a lot of limitations to a person. Because limitation is not something that is natural. A person should not have too much limitations to feel freedom, because otherwise he won't have freedom. And then if he doesn't have freedom, he will try to break out of freedom, of limits and all of those things. To commit adultery, sodomy, or blasphemy. Okay, wait. These acts are universally wrong, according to Aquinas, because they invariably violate the dictates of natural law. Contemporary applications of natural law theory are behind many condemnations of abortion. Just a second. Okay, we'll continue. Where is condemnations? These acts are universally wrong, according to Aquinas, because they invariably violate the dictates of natural law. Contemporary applications of natural law theory are behind many condemnations of abortion. Euthanasia, genetic engineering, embryonic stem cell research, homosexuality, transsexuality, pornography, masturbation, and so on and so forth, and all the other things. According to many natural law theorists, these are all defective ways of dealing with fundamental human goods. Yes, but here I can give you an example. Recently, in several news articles, it happened twice or maybe thrice, that some idiot who is fucked up in his mind, I'm not sure what he thinks, but the thing is that he could have just wanked his prick, but no. He raped a small child, a girl or something, and basically does he really need to follow such a law that prohibits to make all of those things, masturbation and all of the other things? Do you think that he should he should follow this law and not do that? Because in another way, that's where it leads, because it's a limitation in his mind. He always thinks about it, he cannot control himself and all of those things. So it's questionable, it's very questionable. Okay, what goes further is, according to many natural law theorists, These are all defective ways of dealing with fundamental human goods. According to many natural law theorists, these are all defective ways of dealing with fundamental human goods. Life, in the case of abortion, euthanasia, genetic engineering, embryonic stem cell research, and procreation, in the case of homosexual, transsexual, and masturbation. Natural law theory is fundamental to Catholic ethics. Okay, so natural law theory is fundamental to Catholic ethics. So probably some countries have been doing wrongly, considering that there is genetic engineering, embryonic stem cell research, and transsexuality, how popular it is these days, and it happens a lot in many countries in the world, and probably in Catholic countries as well. I'm not sure. Natural law contrasts with what Aquinas calls positive law. Positive law is the law enacted by societies. Positive law is the law enacted by societies. Some positive laws reflect natural law. For example, it is against natural law and against positive law in most societies to murder somebody. Some positive laws are conventional and not part of natural law. So, okay, natural law is something that was created by God. And positive law is something created by people, and sometimes positive law reflects something that is in natural law, as far as how I understood that. Some positive laws reflect natural law. For example, okay, там все такое. Some positive laws are conventional and not part of natural law. For example, it is against the positive law of Australia to drive on the right-hand side of the road, but there is no corresponding natural law against this practice. Finally, some natural laws are not part of properly constituted positive laws. Finally, some natural laws are not part of properly constituted positive laws. This is to say that positive law should not be in the business of making laws for all moral issues. For example, gluttony is against natural law. Gluttony is against natural law. Okay, yeah, but it would be a mistake to make gluttony against the law, in example, against society's positive law. Yeah, but maybe in some countries where there is hunger, epidemic, and all of those things, maybe they can add it into the positive law, or usually it's controlled by the amount of food that one person can get in the store. So not everyone, not to allow such situations when one person, if he wants, just comes to the store and buys everything that is there from certain position, for example, because he just wants to eat it all. Natural law contracts. Positive law should not be in the business of making laws for all moral issues. Again, Aquinas recognizes two main constraints on what positive laws: the possibility of obedience, and the possibility of enforcement. Okay, Aquinas recognizes two main constraints on what positive laws: the possibility of obedience and the possibility of enforcement. Positive laws should be clear, publicly known, and capable of general obedience. For example, a legal prohibition against lying is not something we could reasonably expect people to keep. By contrast, a prohibition against perjury. Perjury, an example, lying in legal courts, is something we reasonably expect people to obey. Positive laws should also be enforceable. For example, gluttony is against natural law, but it would be wrong and foolish to pass a positive law against gluttony because this law would be unenforceable. Which means that every person should know natural law and try himself to obey this law as much as he could, because they cannot unenforceable. They cannot kind of look after everything, and it will be foolish to create positive law for every aspect. That's why people should look after themselves as well from the point of natural law. Here is a problem. According to natural law theory, it is absolutely wrong to kill another human being, even if killing the person would save other lives. The life of one cannot morally be sacrificed for the lives of others. However, what about self-defense? Say I am attacked by someone and the only way for me to defend myself is to kill the attacker. Does Aquinas say that it is wrong for me to defend myself? No. Aquinas, he has a way out called the doctrine of double effect. Okay. He writes, nothing hinders one act from having two effects, only one of which is intended, while the other is beside the intention. Accordingly, so it's basically, no, he didn't want to actually defend himself, he actually wanted to kill him, блять. Accordingly, the act of self-defense may have two effects. One, the saving of one's life, the other, the slaying of the aggressor. Therefore, this act, since one's intention is to save one's own life, is not unlawful, seeing that it is natural to everything to keep itself in being as far as possible. And yet, though proceeding from a good intention, an act may be rendered unlawful if it is out of proportion to the end. So this leads to the cases when they say that you have overdone your defense. So you could have done way more less to defend yourself, because this was overdoing your defense and this led to his death or something like that. And yet, through proceeding from a good intention, an act may be rendered unlawful if it is out of proportion to the end. Wherefore, if a man in self-defense uses more than necessary violence, it will be unlawful, whereas if he repels force with moderation, his defense will be lawful. But maybe he wasn't taught to properly defend himself. Maybe he thought, oh, if I use this brick and put it down the fucking head, so maybe this will be enough. And then after he does it, he understands that was too much, блядь. So this basic idea that it also says summa theologica, this basic idea that it is permissible to do something with a morally bad effect as long as this effect is not your intention has been refined and developed over the centuries. Here is a more contemporary version of the doctrine from Joseph Mangan in historical analysis of the principle of double effect. A person may licitly perform an action that he foresees will produce a good effect. A person may licitly perform an action that he foresees will produce a good effect and a bad effect, provided that four conditions are verified at one and the same time. That the action is in itself from its very object be good or at least indifferent. That the good effect and not the evil effect be intended. That the good effect be not produced by means of the evil effects. That there be a proportionately grave reason for permitting the evil effect. Серьезно, веский, важный, требующий отношения. Okay, grave reason for permitting the evil effect. Okay. So there is. These were 4 points that somehow reinforce or explain what kind of conditions are, or conditions that explain the action that person may take, for instance, that leads afterwards to the bad effect. These modern versions make self-defense tricky. I can save myself by shooting my assailant, because shooting dead another is a direct bad effect, violating condition 1. But yeah, maybe after me he could have killed, or he was planning, or he had been planning, or he had planned, блять, нахуй, to kill somebody else after me as well. Or for instance, I was defending my family, he could kill my family members as well. He was a junkie, so like junkie, and who knows what he's gonna do. I was clearly sure that he's gonna kill me. Пиздец, ебать. These modern versions make self-defense tricky. I can save myself by shooting an assailant, another is directly bad effect, violating condition 1. То есть condition 1 means that the action that you take in self-defense should be different from what he is intending you to do. So if he is taking a gun and trying to shoot you, so then if you take out your gun and try to shoot him, it kind of equivalates it, so kind of makes it the same. That's how I understand. But I could perhaps strike my assailant hard enough to knock him out, foreseeing that the strike could well also kill him. Yeah, but why striking? Maybe he wanted to shoot you into your head, and I could have wanted to shoot him into his leg, for instance, to stop him somehow. But yeah, actually it says that those two things are completely the same. Okay, so I will try to do this in 15 minutes, maybe I'll manage to do that. Here are 2 other examples of the doctrine of double effect in action. Both are taken from Ellison MacIntyre, The Doctrine of Double Effect, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Here, this is the place where you can read some about some philosophers, but not all the philosophers are there. The terror bomber aims to bring about civilian deaths in order to weaken the resolve of the enemy. When his bombs kill civilians, this is a consequence that he intends. The strategic bomber aims at military targets while foreseeing that bombing such targets will cause civilian deaths. When his bombs kill civilians, this is a foreseen but unintended consequence of these actions. Even if it is equally certain that the 2 bombers will cause the same number of civilian deaths, terror bombing is impermissible while strategic bombing is permissible. A doctor who intends to hasten the death of a terminally ill patient by injecting a large dose of morphine would act impermissibly because he intends to bring about the patient's death. However, a doctor who intends to relieve the patient's pain with that same dose and merely foresaw the hastening of the patient's death would act permissibly. So, considering what doctors do, think what you do before you do it, блядь, пиздец. Or think how to formulate the explanation of what you done before doing it, блядь. Because afterwards, if you say one word wrong, блядь, they will fucking put you into the prison, блядь. Even though they know that it's no difference, блядь. When, if ever, is a decision to go to war morally justified? How should armies conduct themselves in war? How should the victors of a war behave towards the losers? These are main questions studied in the branch of moral philosophy called just war theory. Just war theory divides into three subjects, which have Latin titles: just ad bellum, when is it right to go to war? Jus in bello, how should fighting in war be conducted? Jus post bellum, what is the right way to behave at the conclusion of a war? Aquinas made an important contribution to the first two of these. We know from his account of natural law that the intentional killing of innocents is morally impermissible. Intentional killing of innocents is morally impermissible, and this principle dominates accounts of jus in bello. But what of the decision to go to war in the first place? Is this ever justified? What conditions must be met before a decision to go to war is justified? Here is what Aquinas says on the matter. In order for a war to be just, these things are necessary. First, the authority of the sovereign, by whose command the war is to be waged. By whose command the war is to be waged. Так. In order for a war to be just, three things are necessary. First, the authority of the sovereign by whose command the war is to be waged. Secondly, a just cause is required, namely that those who are attacked should be attacked because they deserve it on account of some fault. Thirdly, it is necessary that the belligerents should have a rightful intention. Belligerents. Так. Someone who fights. Сука, блядь, закрыл в пизду. Belligerents should have a rightful intention, so that they intend the advancement of good or the avoidance of evil. Yeah, belligerents, good intent. Yeah, there is some true in these sayings, because when someone fights, they could be a fighter of good, or crazy fuckers who do whatever they want with the people who they kill and then do what they want with them. Блять, пиздец. This is a fairly simple theory. Perhaps it is too simple to deal with the complexities of modern conflict. Contemporary just war theorists have expanded Aquinas. Contemporary just war theorists have expanded Aquinas' account of just ad bellum considerably. Here is one representative account of the conditions that must be satisfied by any just decision to go to war. A just war must be declared by a legitimate authority. A just war must have a just cause. Example: defense of one's country, defense of another's country, to rescue a threatened people. A just war must be declared and prosecuted with the right intention. There must be a strong probability of success. The good obtained must be proportional to the harm done. Блять, вот эти вот number 4, number 5 So strange, блядь. War must be a last resort. Example, reasonable, peaceful means of address must be exhausted. War must be a last resort. That's what I heard about that before. However, what considering first three, the first three are so general. They can be applied to any conflict, probably, or to any war, probably, and this will mean that in any conflict that you have, you can start war, блядь, looking at those three first things. The fourth and the fifth one are doubtful and questionable as well, because there must be a strong probability of success. When you're saving your life, do you really think about success? Or maybe I won't be able to do that. Yeah. The good obtained must be proportional to the harm done. The good obtained must be proportional to the harm done. So when you are starting or declaring war, you should think about some kind of good that you are trying to obtain, and consider how much harm you're gonna do and whether it's equivalent or not. So it's stupid, блядь. War must be a last resort. War must be a last resort is, yeah. At least the number six. Number six is a bit diplomatic. An example: reasonable, peaceful means of address must be exhausted. So I think this was interesting, and I'm very glad that I succeeded in recording it. In 1 hour, or maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. So basically, if you like watching such videos, or if you like, or if you're interested in such format, you are welcome to watch videos on my channel. I do not only have videos of talks about philosophers on my channel, also there are musical videos, gaming videos, and maybe something else. Maybe I don't even remember. But yeah, so basically I would be very glad to see commentaries about this video and this in comments. So, and I will be glad to have your likes, subscribes, and all of those things. Have a good time. No worries. See you guys.